Good evening, welcome to CVS TV News. I'm Rod Burton.
And I'm Lindsay McGovern. Heading tonight's news, Pope John Paul shot.
More trouble in Northern Ireland.
Joe and Mel discuss hospital funding.
Vatican City. Pope John Paul has been shot twice in the stomach by a gunman in St Peter's Square, but Vatican radio says no vital organ was hit. The 60-year-old Polish-born pontiff underwent emergency surgery to remove 2 bullets in the Vatican's Gemelli clinic. Vatican radio says his condition is less grave than was at first thought. The pontiff was shot as he entered St Peter's Square in the papal jeep for a general audience. A series of shots rang out and thousands gathered in the square saw the Pope fall to the floor of the jeep. Members of the crowd leapt on a dark-haired man immediately after the shooting, and shortly later he was hustled away by police. Police sources say they have apprehended 2 men and are looking for a third.
Sources are quoted as saying one of the men held is a 30-year-old Arab student at the University for Foreigners at Perugia, north of Rome. Police say 2 women were also wounded by bullets. They identified one as Anne Audrey of the United States. She is not in a serious condition. Within minutes of the shooting, the pontiff was rushed by ambulance to the Gemelli clinic. Spokesmen at the clinic say the Pope was conscious when he was brought into the operating room and he appeared to be suffering but serene.
Sydney. The Newcastle-built amphibious ship HMAS is to make its first visit to Sydney tomorrow. The 6,000-tonne heavy-lift vessel under the command of Commander Ken Doolan was only commissioned into the Navy on April the 24th. Based in Brisbane, it's the first major ship in the Australian Navy to be purpose-built for amphibious operations and sea transport.
And in Belfast, a young Catholic was fatally wounded in Northern Ireland and 20 people were injured in riots following the death in prison of a second Garua hunger striker. Authorities say Matthew McMahon, 21, died in hospital after being hit in the chest last night by a bullet during an exchange of shots with British troops in Belfast.
London. Prince Charles is to dive to the wreckage of the Tudor ship, the Mary Rose, just over 5 weeks before the royal wedding. The Prince is president of the Mary Rose Trust, which is planning to raise the ship which sank off Portsmouth during a naval battle.
And at Parliament House, Canberra, Queensland Premier Joe Peterson has ended his dispute with the federal government on hospital funding after talks in Canberra last night. He said that while he's received no additional funds for Queensland hospitals, he accepts without argument the views of the Prime Minister, Malcolm Fraser. Mr Peterson says he doesn't mind being accused of backing down because he wants to work in harmony with the Fraser government.
And to soccer. Australia's flying soccer winger Peter Shan is making a last-minute bid for fitness to play in the crucial World Cup game against New Zealand at the Sydney Cricket Ground on Saturday. While the injury has only been diagnosed as a slight foot ligament strain, it has come at a critical moment.
Also on soccer, Sydney Olympic will lodge an official protest today in the wake of their loss to Canberra Arrows in an incredible Phillips Cup soccer clash at Queanbeyan last night. Olympic lost the match after a series of 5 penalty shots were taken more than 10 minutes after the game's conclusion. Canberra won on the last of the penalty kicks by defender Michael O'Shea.
To Cape Town. South African rugby union selectors have included 4 coloured mixed race players but no blacks in the trials from which the Springbok squad to tour New Zealand later this year will be selected. Among them is fly half Errol Tobias, who made history last year by becoming the first non-white rugby Springbok when he was selected for the tour of Argentina.
And over to the greatest game of all, Rugby League. In last night's Tooth Cup game, a very poor Penrith performance was enough to give them a 31-5 win over New Zealand Central Districts in the Tooth Cup at Leichhardt Oval last night. The Panthers' appalling handling cancelled out the Kiwis' sloppy defence for much of the game. I'm Lindsay McGovern.
And I'm Rod Burton, and that's the way we saw this day, the 14th of May 1981. Now for the off-street.
Decision is 1700 today. It's here, 50 miles from Singapore, with 29.5 days left on deployment. Phase 1 of the Starfish A1 exercises has completed, with the ships anchoring at Pulau Tiamen at 15:30. They sail again at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, with the Blue Forces, comprised of Torrent Supply, the 2 RNs and 2 Singaporeans coming into this area and turning around and trying to cross this line here. The orange forces, with the rest of the task group, remained around this area here, next to pull-out Yeoman, and tried to stop supply and their task group coming up and crossing this line. The orange forces from this area have benefit from long-range maritime patrol aircraft, while the blue forces, as they proceed up here, have the benefit of our S2Gs and F5s from airbase at Tanger. That's basically a resume of Phase 2, the tactical phase of Starfish. The areas bounding this tactical phase is this orange line here. Well, this exercise, the Phase 2 part, goes until PM on Friday, and basically that's all I have for you tonight. Good evening.
Now look, I've just about had enough of this. You've let that dickhead in here twice, you let him in here once again, and I'm off. That's the finishman, okay? Look, I'm terribly sorry about this tonight, but I'm having the usual problems that TV celebrities have. There are all these clowns around the place, trying to get in on the act and trying to get in on my show. But I think it's about time we put a stop to this. Right, as far as today's weather went, it was a typical tropical day. We had generally light and variable winds, generally fine, smooth seas, no swell at all, and just the odd shower started to develop this afternoon. As far as our earlier chart was concerned, we were here in a very light southeasterly flow. In fact, at 1500 we got up to probably our maximum wind strength today of around about 5 knots. The temperature was 30.2, and as I mentioned, smooth seas and negligible swell. As far as tomorrow goes, I would expect very similar conditions with light and variable winds, smooth seas, no swell, and just the odd showers, thunderstorms developing around the area, mainly developing over the land and drifting out over the sea late in the afternoon or early evening, with the possibility of just getting the odd one tomorrow morning as well. Now turning to the chart for Australia, weather in Perth was overcast with a temperature of 15 and forecast for showers tomorrow. Partly cloudy in Adelaide and expecting showers tomorrow as well. Cloudy today in Melbourne, expecting showers as well. Overcast in Hobart, expecting cloudy tomorrow. As far as Canberra was concerned, they were cloudy and their temperature range was from 5 degrees Celsius to 10. They're expecting their minimum to go down to 3 tomorrow and their maximum to get to the astounding height of 11. As far as Nowra was concerned, fine today and fine tomorrow. Sydney, fine as well. Brisbane, fine. Cloudy in Darwin and fine tomorrow. So, the weather forecast, in summary for the local area tomorrow. Look, I bloody warned you, that dickhead's come back in here again, so I'm off. You can stick your whole show.
Come back, you big sook. Come on, come back. You're running away as normal. Typical officer. Good evening, viewers. Since this trip started, there's been a few unkind words said about two of the ship's company, two upstanding young men, namely the flight deck officer, yours truly, and the DWO. Now I can speak quite strongly and clearly on the DWO. He's a happy, jovial young man, and he would not be party to any of the things which have been put forward. I just want to lay down, right here and now, the standard of person that the SMETO is, so that any future ravings and rantings will be taken into right perspective. His drinking habits, that has concerned the DWO and myself for some time. We have watched him. He trembles of arms, shakes of limb, his eyes are red and he can't think clearly. It wasn't until I read Garfield, that magnificent cartoon strip on the bottom of 816, that it finally came to light. He isn't a drunk, he just suffers from dehydration. So, if you wish to look like the SMETO, please don't drink any water. Once again, I would like to point out yesterday's shortage of water could once again be blamed upon the SMETO. He is responsible for producing water so that those fine, upstanding young men on the flight deck can shower without needing to go below. In this, he has failed dismally. He talked of baldness. Now, some people suffer from this problem. I, fortunately, am one who don't, so I can understand him being embarrassed with his lack of hair. In fact, it rather intrigues me when he walks up the flight deck with the wind streaming down from the bow, that he always walks backwards, very much like the dodo bird of South Africa, who runs backwards so the feathers don't get blown from the top of his bald head. So if you see him doing this, he hasn't lost his bearings, his gyro hasn't toppled, it's just his vanity. Talking of vanities, he goes to these shops to buy classical guitar music, classical organ music. He sits in his cabin day after day, strumming away, and in fact he intrigued and caught the XO out at one stage, who came round to find who was playing this magnificent music. Well, I'm here to tell you exactly what goes on. There's a cassette recorder in there that plays all this music, while he himself sits at his cabin, playing what is favourably known as the garbophone. I happen to have one here with me tonight, which I stole from his cabin, and I will show you that a person who would resort to this tactic to show that he has some musical appreciation is pretty small. You'll pardon me if I hold my arm up in front of you viewers. Very difficult machine to drive this, although he hasn't had much of a practice. That was a full stop. You may not have recognised that, viewers, but that was Home Home on the Range. Alright, so having taken the S Meadow apart, pointed out to you his shortcomings, I would just like to add that once again, this weekend in Singapore, I have been entrusted with his upkeep and his welfare by his good wife Valerie, who I owe a tremendous favour to for looking after him in the last 14 days in Hong Kong. But I intend to take him ashore. If any of you see us ashore, please don't speak to us. I like to pass it off that he is the idiot and I'm his keeper. And of course, if you talk to us, you'll ruin this whole outlook. Okay, thank you very much, viewers. I'm glad I've had this chance to present my side of it, and I'm sure the DWO will be along very shortly to put the case right as far as he is concerned. Viewers, thank you. Good night.